Hey everybody, today we're going to take a look at 5 tips on how to get started in the 3D industry. So my first tip is to set goals and not just like, hey, I want to be in the 3D industry. That's my goal. No, it has to be something specific and attainable. Set a date and also be specific on what you want to do because the 3D industry is so large that there's so much stuff that you can potentially be able to do. Um, so, are you interested in modeling? Are you interested in texturing? Are you interested in animation? Are you interested in rendering, compositing? There's so much stuff that's involved in 3D. So, first off, when you're setting this goal, you're going to need to do research. So, figure out exactly what each one of the steps in the production pipeline are. Figure out if you're interested in pre production, post production, or the main phase of production, doing animation, creating geometry for characters, environments, all this kind of information. Once you have an idea of what you want to do, start going online on job forums and look at the requirements that people have for or companies have for these types of jobs. So see if there's even a demand for that specific thing. And if there is, then find out what are the specific requirements there for that job. So start looking at job forums and really look at um, the names of the positions that are available there, and that will also give you ability to research those specific terms. So you might not know what all the different job positions are, but maybe when you're looking at the job forums and seeing what openings there are, it gives you an idea of new types of jobs that you might not have even heard of before. So there's that, but also along with the job titles that you're looking at, look at the um, requirements that the job has. So look at not necessarily the amount of years of experience that can be important, but um, what skills are required for that position, and also what software and things like that you might need to learn to be able to get that job. So, um, if you are going into lighting, they're going to have a specific set of requirements that they want you to know for a lot of jobs. And you'll see the more and more jobs that you start looking, you see the same types of um, requirements or skills that are needed for each one of those jobs. So that gives you kind of an ability to create a list of ideas of things that you need to start learning so that way you are qualified for the jobs that you're trying to apply for. Okay, so number 2 on this list is get your portfolio and demo set up so that way you have something to show potential employers what type of work you're capable of doing, and use the research that you found in the first step to kind of build up your demo reel on that. So if you're interested in being a modeler, look up all the skills that you wrote down in my first tip, and then develop content that is based around that. And each studio, if you're modeling, might have different requirements. For example, if you are doing something that is hyper realistic versus very cartoony, they might have different skill types that you will want to focus in on. So, um, in essence, modeling is all the same, but if you are interested at working at a studio that is doing cartoony work, focus on mostly that, maybe 1 or 2 projects that is outside of that realm, just to show that you're not a one-trick pony. But if you really want to do that, put most of your effort into cartoony style work. Then if you're interested in more realistic visual effects types work, then you can focus on that as well. Same thing for animation, for rendering, for compositing, visual effects, anything that you're interested in getting into, just spend a lot of time and get very proficient at that craft. Make sure that you have work that shows that you can do this job, because when you get into the door in your interview, they will have most likely have already looked at your demo reel and portfolio beforehand. So that's going to be like your kind of first step into the door, is being able to get the work that shows that you can do the quality, that you can do the work that they need even before you get into the interview. So um, without that portfolio and demo reel, it's going to be very hard to get in the door and start doing creative work in the 3D industry. So that's why it's so important for you to be able to prove through a demo reel and portfolio that you are doing work that is right in line with what they're looking for. Um, on top of that, you also want to be able to show that you're a creative thinker. So, with your portfolio work, kind of put a lot of thought into the design process, not just focusing in on, okay, I am doing skill A, skill B, skill C, or whatever skills you found on the list that through your research. Um, you also want to put thought into the design and be able to show that it's not just like something that you made because it looked cool, but you actually put some thought into the design and you made deliberate decisions on what you were doing and why you were doing that. Now, my third tip is to get your work out there. Now that you've developed a lot of content for your portfolio, get it out there, get it seen by other artists. There's a few different ways you can do this. One is in person. So if you are in school, uh, whether it's high school or college, show it to your art teacher, show it to other students, show it to anybody that's willing to look at it. So in person, you can get a kind of critique from the people that you know around you. And that's kind of like a really good first step. A lot of people might kind of not like to do this because people are a little bit shy to give you a critique, but you can really tell how their initial reaction to your work is. So make sure you do get that personal in-person critique from people, especially if it's an art teacher or something like that, because they're going to be very honest. And more often than not, hopefully you have a teacher that isn't very kind of like mean spirited with their critiques, but sometimes that exists out there. But make sure that you do um, get it out there and get the teacher to give you a very kind of honest review of the work that you are doing. Outside of that, you can actually go into the internet and get a lot of your work, get exposure for your work. So get it seen on Twitter, get it seen on Instagram, on YouTube, and um, make sure that you spend a lot of time and um, not just kind of get your work onto those platforms, because that's going to be kind of part of the answer that you need there, but you also want to interact with the people that are doing similar things than what you want to do. So um, go to other people's forums and or Twitter pages or Instagrams and things like that, and look at their work, comment it, give your input, give your advice. Also, make sure to that it is honest, fair, but also that it's not like a kind of critique beating, because that's kind of, nobody really wants that, and that's not really helpful, I feel. um, just get tell them, what I like to do with the critique when I start off is tell them what is working first, and get that in the air, and just let them know that, hey, X, Y, and Z are working. And then after they see that that is working, then let them know what's not working with their project that they're displaying. And then that will kind of give it a balance. So if you're just being constantly negative, nobody's going to want to deal with you. But if you're giving honest feedback that is both positive and constructive, that's going to be the best kind of both worlds, where um, you're not really kind of putting people down, but you're also helping them become better artists. Okay, so my fourth tip kind of spills over a little bit with the previous tip, but it's really about networking. And it's not just getting your work out there now, but actually building connections in the industry and just with people in your community. And making sure that they know you're looking for work, that you exist, and what kind of stuff you do. Show off your stuff, and just like before, don't make it just one-sided. Make sure that it's a kind of a two-way street with the communication. Listen, and give back feedback when they ask for it. And it doesn't all have to be art related. It can just be communication with people in varying different industries and things like that, because you never know where jobs are going to come in from. Okay, so quick story time. My first job that I got in the industry, the way I got that was I was at college and I knew I wanted to be, my goal was to work in the entertainment industry, specifically in 3D design. And um, being early on, really the only contacts that I had were my teachers, which eventually I did get work through connections with my teachers, but also my students that I was going to school with, peers of mine. And a lot of them were kind of in the same boat. They didn't really have any connections yet, but I just made sure that I was friendly to everybody and talking to everybody, making sure that they knew that I was a hard worker. And then finally, I talked with the career services people. So, with the career services people, normally while you're in school, they really don't help you out getting industry jobs. What they help you with is getting kind of part time jobs that help you get through college, which was not what I was interested in. And I told them that when I went to go talk to them. But I did tell them what my goals were and what I was interested. I gave them my resume and a portfolio, showed them kind of where I was at, and I told them, hey, I know that you guys aren't looking for jobs for people that are still in school in the industry, but if anything comes up that you guys can't fill, hey, I'm interested. And about 6 months later, I went back and I kind of went back and talked to them. Still, didn't happen anything. They told me, yeah, that's not kind of what we do right now. Once you graduate, we have a separate department that takes care of that. I went over and talked to that department, talked to them, waited another 6 months, but kind of every once in a while went back and talked to them and said, hey, I remember me, how you guys doing? Just kind of building that relationship. Eventually, there was a position that was needed to be filled, and when they were looking for somebody with that for to fill that position, there was nobody that was a recent graduate that had the required skills to be able to do the job that they were looking for. Then they were looking at students that were about to graduate, and there were a couple that were qualified in that area, but they all turned down the opportunity because they were like, hey, I'm too busy working on my portfolio. I need to kind of perfect this so that I can kind of get set and work in the industry and whatnot. And then when that happened, they started thinking, oh man, we don't want to let this job pass by. We need to be able to fill it. So they started going through their files, and then they remembered that I came by about once a month, every once in a while, just to stop by and say hi. And then they, by chance, remembered that what the qualifications that they were looking for, I met those qualifications, specific skills that they would needed. So they gave me a call and they're like, hey, we know you're still in school. Are you interested in this job? We are trying to fill it. We haven't been able to fill this position. They told me the whole story I just told you guys. And I told them totally 100%. I am excited and ready to start. So I went in, I interviewed, and long story short, I got the job. And it was just because I knew that I wanted to be there, and I took steps to get that. I networked with the right people, and I got that opportunity. And there's a ton of stories more like that, and they're just because I made sure and went out there, told people, hey, I'm looking for work doing this specific type of stuff. And because of that, people knew that I was willing to work. People knew that I was a hard worker, that I was not just kind of sitting back waiting for things to happen, but I would actually go out and do things and be productive and do um, take that extra step that people weren't doing. And that little bit kind of made me stand out, made them remember who I was and be able to get me that job. Finally, for the fifth tip is all about finding work and applying for work. And when we start looking for work in this industry, it's kind of a little bit weird because most of the jobs are given to people kind of by word of mouth. So once you're in the industry, it's quite a bit easier to get work and stay kind of employed doing stuff. But it's just kind of hard to get in the fold and get people to know you. And that's why it goes back to a lot of the networking stuff that I was saying before. But sometimes that's just not an option and you just need to start applying. I mean, it's always an option to start networking and talking to people, but um, you can't just wait for a job to land on your lap that way either. So you have to go out and apply. And the tough thing is that most of these jobs are probably not on your typical job boards like Career Builder or Monster.com and things like that. You're going to actually have to go digging and find the right places to get the jobs because they if they post them on places like Career Builder and Monster, they're just kind of very kind of enticing type of job titles, and maybe a lot of people might not be qualified for them and still apply for them. So it gives them a lot more time and effort to go through the applications because there's so many that they just are flat out not qualified to go through. So there's actually a lot of industry specific job boards that I like to go to. There are websites like Creative Planet Network and others that are just kind of specifically tailored to this industry and the type of work that you might be interested in getting that type of work. So I'll put links to a few different websites that are very helpful that are kind of specific to the this industry, the 3D industry, and finding work in doing that type of stuff. Then on top of that, you kind of got to fall back on the research that you did in the first tip that I gave you guys. So um, finding out companies that are hiring and going directly to their websites because a lot of times they're just posting directly on their website and they're not actually putting it on any job boards. So being able to find those and one of the things that I did early on was just went to Wikipedia and looked up animation studios. And it gives you a huge list of all the animation studios that exist out there. And a lot of the time they have the link to their websites directly there in Wikipedia. If not, you can do a quick Google search and find their um, website. Then once you get on their website, you can find the job board specific for that company and be able to find the jobs directly that way. Then on top of that, you can consider doing freelance work. So with freelance work, a lot of times it's kind of scary at first, but I actually found that I made a lot more money and was more stable with work doing freelance over working at studios. So that is definitely an option that you can do. It might take a little bit of time to build up speed with that, but once you get it going, doing this type of freelance work is very sustainable. It's not scary at all. It's just kind of like running your own business, basically. You're instead of going to work for a studio, you're basically your own studio. So that is a very definite kind of like doable um, type of kind of way to get into this industry where maybe you're starting off working with local companies and doing work for them. And also think outside of the box too, because a lot of times people think that the 3D industry is just the entertainment industry, but there's so much more that you can do with 3D. There is medical simulations, so creating 3D representations of what's happening inside of the body or the way medicine reacts inside of the body, stuff like that. Um, there is architectural modeling, so creating a pre-visualization for a way that a building is going to build both inside and outside. So a lot of times people need um, a illustration or a representation of what they are going to be building. It's kind of just part of the permit requirements. And if you're working with a construction like contractor, a lot of times you can get a lot of work coming in doing that type of work. And then um, some work that I did for a little while was like crime scene reenactment. So a lot of times you get a whole bunch of video cameras from the surveillance cameras. So you get the videotapes from all those, and you can actually kind of set up the cameras in real world space and get the focal length and everything, and line up all the security feeds, and then be able to get the exact timing, the exact positioning of everything at any given time. So that way they can actually go back in the scene and you can create your own camera and you can look at it from any perspective you want once you've got the whole thing built out and timed out with what's happening in the cameras. So that is another potential option. There's also product pre-visualization. So a lot of times people are building products that need to be developed, but it costs a lot of money to develop a prototype and get a look for that prototype. So you can actually develop the look and then you can go through a lot of iterations where it doesn't cost them as much as going through and produce the content and then say, well, we need to tweak this. You do it all in the computer, and it will save them money and time. So you can come up with a whole bunch of iterations in one day. Let's say you came up with 10 different iterations. If they had to go through and do that in the with a prototype, an actual like concept of that, that's going to cost them a ton of money compared to paying a 3D artist to develop that type of content. So that's definitely an option for a kind of getting freelance work and stuff like that. And you can do that through getting work on freelance websites, and I'll put some links to different freelance websites down in the description. You can also go in and talk personally to local companies in wherever area that you're at. So you don't have to be in a big metropolitan area to get this type of work with small local companies. You can, small or medium-sized local companies, you can get that type of work a lot of times um, kind of in your local area rather than having to travel out or being able to communicate with them online to get that work. I mean, you can totally do that online and communicate people with people that way, but I find if you can get that one-on-one connection, you are going to be a lot more successful, a lot faster getting these types of jobs. Again, going back with that networking and people relationship building, that's going to be really important if you're going this route, as well as if we're working in the industry. So, or at least within the studio structure, working within another company. So, did I miss anything? Do you guys have any tips of your own that you can give us? Please share them down in the description. It will help out everybody here in the community, me, and anybody else that checks out the descriptions. So, um, please take some time. Even use the description down there to start networking with people that are interested in doing this type of work already. So that's going to be kind of useful for everybody if you guys just spend some time in the comment section. Find maybe one or two people in the comments that seem interesting and start a conversation there. Other than that, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.